So, what inspired me to open my first business? I'm going to say freedom. Freedom um, is what I was looking for. Freedom to make money on my own terms, to make as much money as I wanted to make, as long as I was willing to do the work. There was no cap on how much I could make. The sky was the limit. And, like most people, when they get out of high school or college, they go to a job, and that safety and security is fine because it gives them a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks. For me, when I discovered that I can make a nice amount of money on the hours and days that I wanted to work, then yeah, there was no going to a job. There was no going to a 9 to 5 or 11 to 7. Like, it just didn't make sense for me. So the freedom to make as much money as I was willing to work for was an important part of why I started my first business. Secondly, the freedom to manage my own time. So well, I was when I was younger in my 20s, I had my first daughter Milana, and before then, I was enjoying life. I was enjoying life. I was traveling. I was spending money. Was making money, spending it, doing hair, of course. And then when I had my first child, things changed in my life, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta get serious because I gotta think of my child's future." And so, being able to manage my time was a big deal for me because now I'm a mother and I have a responsibility. So, hairstyling and being a salon owner helped me um, navigate that parenthood thing. Whereas, if I had to take her to school, if I had to go to a play, if I, had to come up to the school for some reason or whatever, like I was able to do that. Whereas in a job, you got to get time off, your child's sick, you got to take off. Like, I had the freedom to, if I didn't want to come to work because my daughter was sick, I didn't go. Or if I wanted to reschedule my clients so that um, I can take care of her or do anything, go to a class trip, come to her school and, volunteer. I could do that. So that freedom to manage my own time, make as much money as I wanted or as long as I was willing to work, um, that's another reason I started because nobody can tell me I can only work 8 hours and make, you know, 10,000 an hour or whatever it was 100 years ago. um, because after taxes, you ain't left with nothing. So here, I have more control. I have more control of my time. And if I wanted to come in early, I can work early. If I wanted to stay late, if I want to do Sundays, I could do that. So I like the idea that I can manage my own time. No one was telling me when I had to be in, what days I could have to work, what days I couldn't come in, what days I can take vacation. I love that part of that. Was one of the things that inspired me to do my own business. And lastly, I'm going to say I had the freedom to be who I was, like learn about who Monica was, align myself with um, what made me tick. And I'm going to say it was always in my DNA to be an entrepreneur because I was not a high school student that, I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer. I didn't want to do all that. I was an average student. I took college prep classes, but I was always a thinking out of the box type of person. I also was a dreamer. And so I would look at magazines and just imagine myself living that lifestyle because, hey, I'm a young girl from Camden, New Jersey, and we didn't have a lot of us, where we seen us doing things besides Jefferson's, good times. And so when I was reading magazines and looking at the pictures, I would imagine myself in those pictures and wearing those clothes. And so one day it clicked on me like, you can't be that or have that unless you can afford that. And so I started like thinking, well, how do they afford this? I realized that, business owners, or I learned that business owners seem to be the most wealthiest people, like entrepreneurs, business owners. And I was like, I can be that, I can do that. But starting out, it was, I had a I'm gonna say a talent. I'm gonna say a talent, but I wouldn't call it a talent because hairstyling was not my first idea. I wanted to be a business owner, but it wasn't in hairstyling. That is a whole nother story. But I used my talent and then merged it with who I was as a person, which I was always a go getter. I was always, thinking about the next step and seeing myself as something that maybe you didn't see me as just because of where I came from. I see myself in another light. And so working as a hairstylist helped me achieve that for myself and helped me build my own, self esteem as far as I worked hard, I did this, I can enjoy the things that I want to have. Not saying that I was, reckless or anything like that, but being able to align with who I really was as a person, being creative, because as an owner and a stylist, you're always creating. As an owner, your creativity is tested every day because you got problems to solve, you got marketing, you got operations, you got the finances, you got to get real creative. And as a mother, I had to be creative there too. How are we going to make ends meet, at certain times? And so, yeah, I think that those are the main things that inspired me. That freedom to live the life that I dreamed of as a young girl, however I needed to get there. Um, that 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 was my reason to start my business. My children were um, they were they were my world, and I just could not see myself um, being poor. I couldn't see myself like struggling with them. So I'm like, listen, as long as you can work, you're gonna eat. That's what I did. I was hustling hard, but you know, um, I think that was just my life track, and I followed where God had me go. And so that's what I would say my inspiration was.